The idea here is to limit the harm, and by placing this temporary restraining order in place, that will make a dramatic difference for public safety.
A federal judge once again blocks Austin-based Defense Distributed from releasing its 3D printed guns on the internet. The plans were set to be released tomorrow.
I've been tracking and reporting on Cody Wilson and his company for the past 2 years. And as far as tonight's decision is concerned, Wilson is ready for the fight.
There's no markings, there's no identifying maker's marks. This is a ghost.
We will force a kind of respect, political or otherwise, upon the people's free and universal access to arms. We will make this a reality of your life.
In 2017, Cody Wilson told me he would not surrender his right to build guns or share 3D printed gun plans on the internet.
The government will shut down one project, we start up another.
Then Wilson got the news he's been fighting for. In April, the government settled a case with his company, Defense Distributed, allowing Wilson to start posting downloadable designs for 3D printed guns on August 1st.
We were informed that we would have lost this case in court, or would have likely lost this case in court based on First Amendment grounds. We took the advice of the Department of Justice, and here we are right now.
Despite the recent setback of a temporary injunction, Wilson says there is not enough political will to stop him, especially in Texas.
Of course, I know my adversary is so much more stronger than I am. But knowing after each kind of roadblock that they throw up against us, that we simply don't stop.
To fund his fight against the government, Wilson created this milling machine called the Ghost Gunner. It lets you build untraceable firearms in your garage. No background check needed, and it's perfectly legal.
I feel confident that there are at least 20,000 AR-15s out there that wouldn't be out there without this machine. And there's no strings on them, right? You don't know where they are.
In reaction, the president tweeted, "I'm looking into 3D plastic guns being sold to the public. Already spoke to the NRA. Doesn't seem to make much sense."
This is not a question of gun rights. This is really, if there were a terrorist and criminal rights organization, they'd be cheering today. Because this is all about how people who shouldn't get guns can get guns easily.
We are trying to affect American gun politics. I think the Second Amendment is the redheaded stepchild of the Bill of Rights, surely, overlooked and truly discredited.
Now, in the past 3 days, more than 2,500 people have downloaded Cody Wilson's blueprints for 3D printed AR-15 rifles. He has agreed not to upload any more blueprints while the court considers a multi-state lawsuit.
This is the Colt 45. There's no markings, there's no identifying maker's marks. This is a ghost.
This homemade handgun could change the gun control debate.
You can make this now. That's a big deal. I think it changes American gun politics. The public doesn't understand yet. It's here, and you can do it.
29-year-old Cody Wilson just made it easier than ever for anyone to own a handgun, regardless of felonies, a domestic violence charge, or a restraining order. With very little skill, Wilson says you can make a gun using his CNC milling machine.
It's cheap, it's quick.
Called the Ghost Gunner.
We're not just talking about one handgun, we're talking about all handguns at the end of the day.
The machine comes with programmable software that precisely drills the rails and holes needed to make this piece of aluminum, called an 80% frame, ready to be assembled into a handgun. The trigger, slide, and the rest of the components can be purchased on the internet.
The original goal of Ghost Gunner was to get to a handgun because that's concealable. The 1911, the most popular handgun of all time, and the Glock.
But not everyone is excited about it. Law enforcement has no idea this gun exists. You can make this in your garage with a Ghost Gunner machine. No background check, no serial number. This is a ghost gun.
The only purpose for a serial number is to trace a gun back if it's found in a crime scene, but it's untraceable, so we have nowhere to start to go back to trace that firearm.
ATF traces about 300,000 crime guns a year with one goal:
track it and find out how the trigger puller got his hands or her hands on that firearm.
But with an unserialized ghost gun,
yeah, it's impossible.
My question would be why?
Austin Police Chief Brian Manley says these guns are making law enforcement's job more difficult.
I just have to ask why. Those that are legally authorized to own weapons can very easily go and purchase them at local gun stores or at trade shows.
It's attuned to throwing gasoline on the fire.
Texas Gun Sense Vice Chair Ed Scruggs says it's only a matter of time before more of these ghost guns start showing up at crime scenes.
The primary goal of a handgun is to kill a person, whether that be in self-defense or in the commission of a crime. The proliferation of untraceable handguns has an astronomical, dangerous aspect to it. For the most part, it's flying under the radar.
I mean, I'm not here to comfort you, man. We fundamentally disagree. It's still so unusual to see someone use a homemade gun in a crime.
What do you say to the people that are afraid of you and your machine?
Boo. It says American is apple pie, to make a gun for yourself and to help other people make it. I'll do everything I can to make this a useful tool and fling it all over this country until this government submits.
ATF agents say untraceable weapons are starting to show up on crime scenes here in Texas, threatening public safety. They're called ghost guns. One man behind adding these guns to the streets is right here in Austin.
We are trying to affect American gun politics. We're completely committed to what we're doing.
29-year-old Cody Wilson is taking aim at gun control.
We will make this a reality.
He's trying to forge a new future for firearms by removing the barriers for access and ownership.
We will force a kind of respect, political or otherwise, upon the people's free and universal access to arms.
Wilson made history by developing the first 3D printed single-shot handgun in 2013.
You release your trigger.
His mission is to create the world's first wiki weapon and share the plans of the 3D printed gun on the internet.
We were shut down like 2 days after that pistol was developed and then released.
As he continues fighting the State Department in court, his company, Defense Distributed in Austin, launched a new operation.
The government will shut down one project, we start up another.
Here, Wilson makes and sells what he calls the Ghost Gunner milling machine. This machine precisely drills holes in a metal piece called a lower receiver, so you can build an AR-15 rifle in your garage.
I feel confident that there are at least 20,000 AR-15s out there that wouldn't be out there without this machine. And there's no strings on them, right? You don't know where they are.
You don't know where they are because the government can't track this weapon. Cody Wilson's machine mills out this section, the trigger mechanism. You can buy the rest of the gun off the internet. No serial number, no background check, and it's perfectly legal. But ATF says they are concerned about these weapons.
Our job is harder because it's impossible for us to figure out where it came from.
Are you starting to see ghost guns show up at crime scenes?
Yes, we are starting to see them here in Texas. If it shows up on a murder scene, we don't have any way of going back to see who originally purchased that gun and then track it to, hopefully, the person who pulled that trigger. Any gun, without a serial number that's untraceable is a concern of ours, and it should be a concern for the public.
They should be. ATF should be concerned.
Wilson says it's inevitable that ghost guns will end up at crime scenes, and he says there are not a lot of them out there yet.
It's still completely outside the norm for gun crime to involve these types of weapons.
But he welcomes the controversy.
This is thoroughly an enjoyable thing. And it's kind of like playing Battleship. I mean, when I see fire, when I see the government bureaucrats kind of scatter and stuff, I know that I'm onto something.
As Wilson continues to promote the decentralized distribution of weapons, he says there are new plans in the works for the Ghost Gunner machine. And as far as what's next?
Look, if I was to answer that question honestly, that would be a problem. I want something truly, truly fundamental shifted in the internet. This is about to be for keeps, and I'm about to make it, and no one's even trying to really stop me.
Cody Wilson says his next big project will be revealed later in May or early June. He also says it will be perfectly legal.